Hello, everybody. It's Piers here from PSFK. It's great to have you join us on this webinar. So for today's webinar, we're going to look at customer service. And in particular, we're going to look at chat, conversational AI, and chatbots. We've been covering so much of this in the stories in the newsletters and in our research papers. And we decided to put together a research report recently to study what's happening in this sector and provide a framework for you to think about how you could apply these trends and these opportunities in your own work. So today, my colleague and partner, Scott Latchett, who is the President of Research and Strategy at PSFK, will be presenting alongside his colleague, Connor Dial.
Afternoon, everyone. This is Scott here, and as Piers mentioned, I'm joined by Connor, and we'll be taking you through some top-line highlights from our recent report. Excited to have you all joining. So with all that said, let's dive in. As Piers mentioned, we're going to really be focusing on conversational AI and chatbots, both looking at this from the standpoint of the customer-facing experience that these new technologies can provide in terms of that next-generation customer service experience, as well as how these technologies are being leveraged within the enterprise as well to assist employees as they look to deliver better service and experiences, both to clients as well as customers. So just a quick note about us. We do release a new debrief every month. Most recent one prior to this was our travel debrief. Alongside that, we also will be posting these webinars. If you're not reading them, we encourage you to read our newsletters and check out all the great reports that we have on the site currently as well. So just sort of looking at where the customer is at in today's marketplace, I think we know specifically that anytime a consumer is interacting with a brand, there's an expectation that they will be available on every channel from online, mobile, to social as well. And there's the expectation that there's going to be a brand representative or some way that that brand will be able to engage them with immediate assistance. So that notion that wait times are no longer acceptable in today's marketplace, and that there's an expectation that there will be immediate service available to them. Similarly, as we look to the global marketplace and the sort of notion that traditionally you might call a customer service hotline and be directed to the fact that they're closed for the day. That really doesn't work for consumers nowadays. Alongside that sort of notion of wanting immediate service, there's an expectation that regardless of what time it is in their current marketplace, that brand is going to be available to them to provide service and assistance as necessary. If we look at sort of the way that customer service typically works, if we go back to that sort of metaphor of calling in on the phone, you have to sort of walk through the sort of steps to report a problem, and there's a lot of onboarding that's required in that process. As we think about the intelligence that these connected platforms and services provide, there's an opportunity to move from that sort of reactive to proactive care, where you already have a sense of what that challenge is that the consumer is potentially facing, and or if we go push that even further and think about connected products, that you're able to offer that support before a problem even arises. And then along those same lines, that sort of notion that when I'm calling in or going through that process of through my mobile device or on my laptop, that I shouldn't have to sort of tell you who I am. There should already be that sort of recognition. Alongside of that, all of data and the things that you know about me as a customer who has interacted through that process, and leveraging that information to deliver a more personalized experience. In terms of what that means for business operations, I think one of the big things that we see as these systems are able to sort of break down operational silos within an organization, particularly as we think about information sharing and data, getting that into the right hands of individuals who need that for their particular job. You have a system that sort of works across the aisle, if you will, to take the information from various points within an organization and then analyze that and distribute that across the board to the people who need it. Similarly, that sort of notion that with AI and particularly machine learning, that we move from this notion of static data where traditionally that's needed to be analyzed, and by the time it's gone through that process, it's already old and new things are happening within the marketplace or within the organization. Now that can happen in real time, and we're moving to this sort of actionable insights where an organization can be much more adaptive and responsive to the changes as they happen. Similarly, this sort of notion that businesses now can have a much greater handle on what's happening from a global point of view outside of their particular local market, with analysis coming in from, again, if you're thinking of running a global business, you have all of that information available across your various headquarters or stores or what have you, and you're able to pull that all in and make larger decisions about where your business should be heading. And then, traditionally, if we think about customer service currently in the sort of current model, you have human members of staff that need to be, if we're thinking about that, the sort of expectations of consumers, available 24 hours a day, and then they need to be trained and have access to all the information that is required to deliver that sort of personalized service. Now, as we start to sort of automate some of those processes and or at least have those tools available to members of staff, they become more efficient, and or some of those FAQs and sort of common problems can be automated, and then those human members of staff can either be doing more knowledge work within the organization and or delivering the attention to the customers who actually need that sort of assistance from a human member of staff. What we like to do with these debriefs is just kind of give a snapshot of what we see happening within the broader marketplace. And the chatbot ecosystem is quite interesting. If you look across the top, you obviously have those companies that are helping organizations create chatbots and AI systems to help, again, either with customer-facing applications and or internal operational platforms within the organization. One of the things that to look out for when thinking about choosing a particular bot provider is, does that sort of seamlessly integrate across all the various platforms? Again, this is just a quick snapshot of the sort of dominant platforms where chat is already being integrated and used. I think all these symbols are pretty familiar to all the folks on the line. And then finally, again, I think what makes these systems exciting and also beneficial to a business sort of looking forward is because they're generating so many sort of interactions and engagements with customers, they're able to take in a lot of information and data, that there's some compelling analytics that can be driven around that process as well. Not only is that help improve the performance of the sort of chatbot or the AI system itself, but again, that information can be shared across the organization to help improve business making decisions and the like. And then at the bottom is, again, just a sort of quick hit of some of the companies that we've come across in our research who are doing interesting things within the space. This is not a comprehensive list by any means, but some of these names will show up within the context of this particular presentation, but more broadly, some of the early pioneers within the space that are using bots within their organization in varying capacities as well. So for the balance of the presentation, what we're going to be doing is taking you through 6 trends that we've identified. That first half of this part of the presentation will focus on enriching the customer experience. Again, these are sort of thinking about traditional sort of customer service interactions that are now automated and enhanced in various capacities. A lot of this obviously focusing on the retail space, but more broadly beyond that as well. And then the second 3 trends are thinking more about internal organizational processes that are being helped through the use of AI and chatbot enabled systems as well. And what we're going to do is we'll touch on that trend quickly, Connor's going to jump in and highlight one of the examples that we've pulled from our research and that appears in the actual report. And then we'll kind of rinse and repeat throughout. And then we'll just hit you up with a few sort of best practices right at the end as well. So as I mentioned, really sort of thinking about today's customer, what their expectation is in terms of that engagement from brands. Obviously, within a customer service sort of situation, there's often a little bit of negativity. There's a problem or a challenge that needs to be solved. How do you get customers through that process so that it meets their expectations and turns a potential negative into a positive situation and ensures that sort of long-term loyalty? The first idea that we're going to focus on here is what we're calling assisted self-service. I think with the sort of tech savviness of today's consumers, we know that there's a lot of things that consumers are doing on their own. I think what makes the sort of chatbot and chat-related services really interesting is that they're there to provide that sort of on-demand assistance and really help customers solve their own issues in a much faster way. Again, I think one of the sort of things that we highlight throughout this presentation is that sort of notion that if you are able to automate 75% of the sort of issues or challenges that are coming in, then the human staff that you do have on hand are able to spend more time using that high touch service that customers are coming to expect. At the bottom of each of these trend pages, we conducted a survey as part of this debrief, and it's something that we're doing much more frequently going forward to just sort of bring in some of that first person data that we're gathering. And so, just highlight 41% of customers are using chat applications to sort of get in-depth knowledge about products that they're seeking and answers about services. It's the way that people sort of dominantly are communicating with one another, and we only expect that number to continue to rise moving forward.
And this trend is pretty ubiquitous in the digital customer service realm, but what NatWest is doing is implementing a baking bot in their in-branch locations. So their baking bot, Kora, can answer simple verbal questions like, what do I do? I lost my card. How do I sign into my online service? And the purpose of Kora is to help offload in-branch service representatives. But right now, Kora's AI skills are very simple, but the goal is to help her detect human emotions and react verbally to physical and emotional cues as well. And we have a short video.
Hey, I'm Kora. I am here to help you. Currently, I can help with the topics on the right.
I've lost my card.
Do not worry. Losing a card can happen to anyone. It's easy to replace, especially when you're online. Was it your debit, credit or savings card?
Debit card.
Do you have online banking?
Yes.
Great. Log into online banking in the other tab at the top of the screen and select Cards from the left-hand menu. In the Manage Your Debit Card section, select Report Your Card Lost. Then just fill in the details we are asking for on the form, and you are good to go.
Thank you.
No problem. I'm glad I could help.
I think what's interesting as we look at an example like this is obviously this company is trying to take it a step further in terms of thinking about not only providing the service, but also thinking about the sort of personalization or the personality behind that bot as well, and sort of creating a physical embodiment of it. It'll be interesting to see going forward how brands and other services start to think about the personalities behind these systems and really try to differentiate themselves from the competition to develop these emotional relationships with their consumers using these automated services as well. So as we look at another way that this is manifesting within the sort of landscape currently, there's this notion of what we're calling conversational commerce. I think from a consumer point of view, we're at a great time to have all these amazing choices that are available to us. But at the same time, that can cause a lot of confusion and sort of decision fatigue about all of the different models and sizes and styles and fits and things that are available let alone choosing from brand A versus brand B. And what we're seeing is that sort of twofold within the way that these systems function, that either through understanding who that customer is from a personal preferences point of view, and or using a guided questionnaire to understand better what it is that a customer is looking for, that these systems are able to help curate a set of recommendations. It might not be the only recommendation, but it helps narrow down that set of choices to help customers choose the right product for them. And again, I think this is super important, especially as we think about the digital commerce space. There's been a lot being written about the sort of challenge of returns, particularly as we get into that sort of e-commerce space, simply because people aren't interacting with the product in a physical context. And so how you help customers choose the right product is also, from an operational point of view, hugely important to cut down on all the costs associated with returns and the like. Again, as we, in this particular stat isn't necessarily related to our survey necessarily, but we see that shoppers report that 45% that they're more likely to shop on a site that offers personalized recommendations. And, more importantly, of those customers that are willing to do so, over 50% report that they're more likely to return to that site. And we know that cost of acquisition of customers is a big business expense, and any way that you can help ensure repeat business and loyalty is going to be hugely important moving forward as well.
And a great example of this is H&M's Kick Messenger bot. So customers can access the Kick bot and receive recommended products that are in the H&M catalog. And the intention of this is really to help cultivate a personalized digital brand experience. And it starts off by asking the customer lifestyle and fit preferences, and then we'll cultivate a list of suitable recommendations. And customers can then use the app to make a product purchase or direct it to friends on the Kick app and ask for their thoughts as well.
Then with this last trend in the consumer-facing side of things, we're going to look at what we're calling intuitive onboarding. And I think this is a really important notion to think of, especially as we sort of think about the fact that friction within any sort of transactional moment or set of steps is going to lower the chance that someone is going to move through to that next stage in the process. That can either be signing up for a new service or completing a transaction. What we've seen is that using these chat-enabled services and or AI-based systems, that they're able to help automate some of these processes, complete some of the information automatically using existing customer information, and or just sort of help to be there to walk people through these complex processes so that they're not getting frustrated and sort of moving on or abandoning that process altogether. Just sort of highlighting a quote from the chief executive officer of the Relay Network. Chatbots are most effective in situations where a customer is trying to resolve routine issues, complete specific tasks like placing an order, or guiding a user through a multiple step process. The benefit is the ability to close the loop with customers along the process efficiently and in a delightful way. I think there's a lot of implications here for that sort of post-purchase process as well, how you get somebody into that broader ecosystem of your brand and the product that they're using, and or again, sort of through that sort of sign-up process in an efficient manner.
So healthcare in the United States isn't the most simple of processes, as most of us know, but the startup HealthJoy is trying to make that process a little bit easier for employees who get their healthcare through their employers. And what HealthJoy does is not only help them make better healthcare decisions, but also identify physicians and make payments and get healthcare services that are aligned with their financial goals and needs. So HealthJoy helps continue the payment and healthcare process after operations or patient visits.
And then as we sort of transition to that next phase within the report, again, sort of thinking about how these same systems can help improve efficiencies within internal operations, mainly sort of focusing on the way that they can step in and sort of take tedious processes out of the hands of employees and or provide a level of assistance and knowledge to help them do their jobs better or provide a higher level of customer service ultimately. So that first notion and that we're going to look at is what we're calling enhanced profiling. And this is really sort of thinking about, particularly within the sales process, how traditionally the understanding a client involves a lot of manual processes, a lot of cold calling and things of that nature. In this particular instance, we see that these chatbot systems are able to analyze existing client profiles based on call records and various other things, and listen in and sort of see when applicants are more likely to be ready to sort of take the next step in that sort of broader relationships, and just ultimately sort of improving the closing ability of Salesforce. Again, just quickly highlighting, this time coming from the CEO of Slack, some of the most important software categories that will evolve in the next couple of decades are going to be driven by conversational interfaces powered by AI to improve people's productivity. And again, this is sort of a huge aspect of the sort of workplace going forward. We're taking the more positive route that technologies won't necessarily replace human staff, but just augment their ability to do their jobs better.
Yeah, and I think Conversational is a great example of just empowering the employee and maybe cutting down on time wasted. It's a sales assistant platform that helps automate lead contact identification. And it's the first point of contact for maybe customers that are making the initial query, of seeing if a service is the right fit for them. And it uses machine learning to identify key triggers about interest and see which customers are more likely to follow through with a sale. And once it identifies the point where a lead is ready to purchase, it conducts a seamless offload to a live agent. So the customer isn't quite aware that there was a transfer, that they were initially speaking to an automated representative.
And then as we think about, again, touching on that last point that I mentioned, where we're thinking about the sort of hybrid relationship that we see sort of moving forward within that workflow, where a AI platform or AI assistant becomes a colleague that is really sort of collaborating with an employee to help them get their job done more efficiently, and or thinking about offloading some of these more tedious tasks to allow them to spend more time on meaningful uses of their time and attention. You know, there is a skills gap that we're starting to see within the context of the broader marketplace, and that's something that's going to have to be addressed through training and other sort of job creation systems. But at the same time, hopefully this will allow people to be doing more meaningful work long term, and sort of taking out some of the more tedium of some of these tasks that are currently required. 44% of customer service agents believe that using chatbots for customer service will allow them to handle less mundane questions and apply their intellect to more important tasks. So certainly, a growing sort of shift within that space, and an opportunity again for companies to start thinking about improving employee retention going forward as well.
So Microsoft teamed up with Publicis Group for an employee collaboration platform. And what this does is really help offload the time-consuming task of maybe finding new research or finding new employee connections that maybe have a more proper skill set depending on the project that you're working on. So Marcel, the platform, will receive maybe a project outline or hot topics that are going to be used, and then will help cull a list of relevant employees amongst Publicis Group's multinational offices, and help sync them, and really helps encourage global collaboration.
And then as we mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, I think one of the sort of big benefits of these systems is to really sort of look more broadly across an organization, both nationally and globally, to pull in a bunch of interesting information. If we think about this from the customer facing side of the business, again, all of those interactions are logged, customer data is captured, and the sort of success or failure of these things is constantly being tracked so that the system is able to learn and evolve over time. And then from a more sort of internally focused side of things, pulling in all of this information, using it to more broadly understand what's happening from a global sort of operational point of view, and then ensure that the folks within the organization who need that information are getting their hands in a timely manner. And again, much of this is happening in a real-time context as well. Just sort of thinking about, again, from that customer-facing side of things in terms of why these systems are so effective. This comes from the CEO of Snatchbot, which is one of these platform providers. Customers are extremely honest with bots, and the data derived from these conversations is going to change businesses. They provide a unique opportunity for companies to gather data and pinpoint the trends and demands of customers. So again, sort of thinking about this as a way of recognizing perhaps pain points or emerging needs, and then using that as a way to address from an organizational point of view.
And Galvin is a chatbot that helps source and democratize all of the organization's previous customer engagement and consumer insights, and helps make them actionable for employees. So it manifests in two ways. Employees can receive a daily 5-minute briefing that contains maybe relevant consumer insights. It also represents itself as a consumer-facing chatbot, so consumers can receive more relevant information that is based off of previous consumers and their engagement history.
Great. So one of the things that we just wanted to sort of quickly highlight, and I forgot this as we were sort of setting up the presentation, but within the context of this report, we have created a sort of user scenario that looks at potential ways that these systems could be leveraged. In this case, thinking about potential customer looking for car insurance for a new driver within the family, and the various ways that some of these trends manifest in terms of turning that sort of customer service interaction into a net positive and getting them, this customer, through that particular process. So we've got Hayden, who we see here on the screen, who has his daughter that's going to be joining the family in terms of new driver. He's an existing customer and is looking to his current insurance provider to sort of create a competitive quote. So again, thinking about that sort of 24/7 expectation from consumers, because he's after sort of traditional business hours, he's routed through to Facebook Messenger, where he's able to interact both through chat or so text-based or voice. And then thinking about the ways that the system is able to tap into existing knowledge about that customer. In this case, perhaps the Facebook profile is a way to, of course, he's opted in to share this information with the insurance provider. I guess that's something we have to talk about now. But through that information, the system is able to understand just sort of general information about who he is, recognizing that he's, has a wife and 2 children, and that it sort of is able to intuit that he has a daughter coming of age, linking to sort of existing platforms so that it's able to pull in information very quickly, and again, sort of automating that process, knowing that even if he doesn't have specific details about the vehicle that he wants to add for his particular daughter, that it's able to use visual recognition technology to sort of pull some of that in, and get him more quickly into that process. And then, going through that process of giving him an initial quote, which, while it doesn't necessarily meet his particular needs at the moment, that's able to sort of sync him up with a call the next day with a live agent, who then provides him with a discount and ultimately gives him the sort of experience that he needs, respecting his time and sort of getting through that process in a much more efficient manner. And again, sort of keeping that customer retained within the organization as well. So just a couple things to leave you off with in terms of some of the best practices that we've identified within our sort of broader understanding of employing customer service bots within the organization. The first being building trust with your customer. Again, this can be sort of in a number of different contexts. One being thinking about ensuring that the customer is aware of the fact that they're talking to a bot versus a human representative. I think we know that customers are very interested in the transparency that comes alongside all of these various engagements. As I mentioned before, there's the notion that, with all of this sort of access to data and information, that this does feel like an opt-in experience, and there is a value exchange that comes alongside of that. I'm going to sort of go to the right and talk about number 4 first, or secondly, thinking about really being clear from a design and development point of view about the problem that you're trying to solve. Generally speaking, while there's opportunity to sort of bring in multiple use cases within these platforms, it's really important from the sort of jump to know that, these are the 2 or 3 sort of key use cases that we want to start with, and then sort of building from there so that there's an obvious sort of value proposition for consumers, and it's a much better system that you then control. Similarly, curating that experience for customers so that there's the opportunity to bring in the relevant information for them in terms of pulling in necessary data and information about that particular consumer, and or using that as a way to provide relevant recommendations and the like. Thinking about from an ecosystem point of view is, again, just much more broadly about understanding how best to sort of implement that within the organization, and understanding what are the types of systems that you need to pull in and have access to. A lot of times, what is the data that the system needs access to? Who are the key players within the organization that are going to need access to this? As well as, as we talked about in that previous scenario, thinking about the external sources that might need to play a role within this broader experience too. 5 is really sort of thinking about giving customers control within that process. I think not feeling as though they're trapped, sort of going down this rabbit hole, so to speak. So always giving them an out in terms of being able to start that process over or get access to human staff if necessary. And then finally, thinking about how you use the data and the information that you're pulling into the system to help it learn and get smarter over time so that it creates a better experience moving forward.
Thank you so much for presenting today. It's been very insightful, with a real great framework as we try to contemplate how we use these chatbots and this conversational AI. Thanks, Boga, for organizing, and thanks everybody for being part of this. Have a great day.